Okay. So these are the technical questions which I have prepared from three domains, mainly the editing, sound recording, and cinematography. These are the technical parts I have formulated. I was not really could think from the directorial point of view, but these technical questions, they expect everybody to understand. And this is a common part of the paper one, which we have already discussed, the visual part. Now, these are the technical question because there I have seen certain technical question are being asked about the exposure and things like that. So if somebody is appearing for editing, he might find it little not very high level of question, but these are the common question which everybody is supposed to know. Whether you are a cinematography student, direction student, editing student, sound recording student, this is a common part which they expect everybody to understand related to editing, sound recording and all that. So these are the very basic question I have formulated, but people who are from editing, they might find them very simple. But those who are not from editing, they need to understand them more very, very clearly. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to crack the general part. So these are roughly around 36 questions I have formulated. I am going to read them and I will be a little slow because these are, you need to understand them also. Later on, once you read them, there is a small explanation I have also added so that you understand better. Now, what is the primary purpose of film editing? So there are various options are given. I have found a couple of more options also. So they can choose any three or four and then they can say A plus B, A plus D or whatever. So primarily to record the film's dialogue, to shape the narratives and control pacing, to showcase the editor's technical skill, to manipulate time, space, and emotion to enhance the narrative, focus solely on visual. So these are various kind of alternative. They can pick up something. So basic purpose is basically to manipulate time and space and emotion to enhance the narrative. That is the main thing. Okay. Again, here they have also mentioned to shape the narrative and control pacing. Yes. To record the film's dialogue. Uh, of course, but it is not the only purpose. So depend upon the question and alternatives given over there. Which term referred to the seamless flow of action from one shot to another in a film editing? It is called continuity. Okay. So there are various continuities are there. There is a light continuity, then there is a continuity of the properties, then there is a continuity of action, continuity of direction. So there's a book called Five C's of Cinematography where there's a particular chapter on continuity. Those people who have not taken botheration so far to read it, you must read whether you go to FTI, SRFTI or not. As a filmmaker, this is a basic 5 C's of cinematography where one chapter is continuity. So what kind of continuity can be there? They can ask a question. 180-degree rule is a very, very important rule. And what is the purpose of that? If you maintain the consistency on the screen direction. So two people are fighting, one is going from left to right, right to left. So that confusion should not be there. That is the one of the purpose. Which editing technique involves rapid cutting between shots to condense time or create intensity is called montage. So many of the song picturization and other thing you would have seen. Soviet montage is very, very popular. So those who are not familiar, they should get familiar with the montage sequences and type of montage exist. Intellectual montage is there and this and that. So there could be a one question on the montage. What kind of various montage exist? What is the jump cut? Now, they may not ask this way. They might pick up the one film of Godard, one film by someone else, where there is no jump cut. So Godard's film called Breathless is very popular for the jump cut. They introduced that. So what exactly is the jump cut? Is an abrupt cut within the same shot, creating a jarring effect. And what is the purpose? To disorient the Breathless example is also given here. Which editing technique? Let me just see if recording is going on properly or not. Okay, fine. So which editing technique alternates between two or more screen happening? We call it as a parallel editing. One time and space something is going on, another time and space another thing is going on, and when we cut them parallelly, you will find the parallel editing. What does a match cut achieve aesthetically? It links two shots through visual or theme similarly. In editing, what is meant by the term rhythm? So these are the very terms which are not very mechanical kind of mathematical kind of term, rhythm, pace. So they will give you a couple of alternative and you need to pick up the one. So the pacing and tempo created by the duration of shot, whether it's a short duration, 10 second, 20 second, how you create rhythm and how you create a pace is also a question, but those will be descriptive question for the editing student. This much you should know in general. So what is the purpose of cutaway? To briefly shift focus to a related object or action. In a sequence, you see sometimes the cutaway. So what are the reasons? They will give you a couple of reasons and you need to choose the correct one. Which editing technique uses a gradual transition from one image to another, often to indicate the passage of time? We call it as a dissolve. So these are the small thing you need to remember. These are the very basic questions, but as I said, uh, if you don't know, then it is difficult. These are from the general point of view questions. Uh, just a moment. Okay. So what is Kuleshov effect in a film editing? This is a little tricky question. So you need to understand the idea that short just juxtaposition influences audience perception. So read little more about this particular thing, what exactly it does. If you don't read it, you will not immediately able to understand. So please, tomorrow morning, do a little research and read on this little how some examples and other thing. So that will be much more clearer. Which editing style emphasize emotional impact? Just give me a moment. Okay, so I was get okay. Which editing style emphasize emotional impact over narrative continuity? As I said, there are various kind of montages. So Soviet montage is one which is developed by Eisenstein, not Einstein. It is Eisenstein. Remember it. There could be a confusion between these two names. So Soviet montage is the technique. A most important question: what is an L cut? Okay, what is an L cut in film editing? Now there could be various options, so read them carefully. But if you know exactly what it is, you should be able to. And the same question I have also included in that video also, where the image is there. So do refer to that. But otherwise here, a cut where audio from one shot continue into the next. Okay, so that's called L cut. What is the purpose of J cut in editing? Sometimes they can ask a purpose, sometimes ask a, what is a J cut, what is a L cut. So to introduce audio before the next scene, before the visual cuts. So you get introduced about the scene through the audio. So J cut, L cut, these are two important questions they can ask you. Very important. Everybody should know whether you are editing applicant or not. Which editing technique is used to maintain the spatial continuity between shot is called eye line match. If I'm talking to two people, if I'm looking at your face, next shot, my eye line cannot go down. So it's a very important part taken care while the shoot is happening. What does the term pacing refer to in the film editing? Pace, rhythm, these are the two terms which you need to understand very clearly when you do the edit and all that. The speed of camera movement, the rate at which the story unfolds, arrangement of props on the set, timing. These are the some of the options, but they might give you a little more complicated options. So depend upon who's formulating these question, what alternative they give. But if you know what exactly it is, then you should be able to quickly pick it out. The rate at which the story unfolds through the short duration and transition. Which editing technique is often used to create suspense by alternating between two converging events? We call it as a cross-cutting. What is the aesthetic purpose of fade to black? Sometimes fade in, fade out, we call it also. So to signal that the end of a sequence is over and the next sequence begin, or maybe a scene part also. In a continuity editing, what is the reverse shot used for? To depict the conversation between two shots, two characters. What is the primary aesthetic goal of invisible editing? When we say invisible editing means you should not be able to feel it, that edit is happening, not too much of editing. It should such a seamless that you should not be able to notice it. That is the purpose of good editing. to make cuts seamless and unnoticeable to the audience. Which editing technique involve cutting to a completely unrelated image for a dramatic effect? We call it as a smash cut. What does a cut on an action achieve in editing? To maintain the continuity by cutting during the movement. If somebody is picking up the glass in a long shot, in a mid shot, you see the same continuity of the movement of his hand. So that is, we call it as a cut on the movement. What is the aesthetic role of long duration or long take? Long take does means long shot. There's a difference between long shot and long take. Long take means long duration take in a film editing. To create realism, tension, or immersion. Alfonso Cuarón, one example, most of the people have seen it. But if you see the films of Nicolas Yancho, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute duration shots are there. In Indian cinema, some of the films of Ketan Mehta's, you do see long duration shots, particularly in Mirza Masala. If you see that film carefully, there is a long duration shots also in that film. Which editing technique uses graphic similarities to transition between shot? We call it as a graphic match. Now, this is a little difficult for you to understand, but there is a good reference about the psycho shower sequence where the graphic match transition between shots with a similar shape or composition happens. If you watch that carefully, you will understand what it is exactly. What is the purpose of temporal ellipsing in editing? To skip over unnecessary time in narrative. Sometimes you show this, that, you don't show all those detail and you quickly move to the main action. In editing, what is meant by continuity of time? As I said, that whether if some discussion is happening within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that 3 minute continuity has to be there in the film, and how do you show it is also a purpose to maintain a logical progression of time within the narrative. Which editing technique is used to transition between scenes by sliding one image off the screen? We call it as a wipe. This is a grammar of film editing. They might ask you a question like this. Which editing technique is most associated with experimental or avant-garde film? We call it as a jump cut, as in French New Wave, Breathless we talked about. What is the purpose of flashback in editing? To reveal the past event relevant to the narrative. Some of the films of Gulzar, if you see carefully, they happens in a flashback. Which editing technique used to create a sense of chaos or a disorientation? We call it as a rapid cutting. Point of view shot is a very important thing. So what exactly is a point of view shot? Aligns with the audience with the character's perspective. So point of view shot align the audience with a character's perspective, enhancing immersion. So confusion के लिए इस टाइप से alternative बनाया हुआ है मैंने. So a point of view shot is exactly, you should know what exactly it is about. What is the purpose of temporal overlap in editing? To repeat an action from the different angles. So Pulp Fiction के अंदर कुछ एक sequences हैं. You can, and also in a commercial film very often you might see such kind of a thing. Which editing technique is most effective for showing cause and effect? We call it as a match on action, whether it is lifting up something or anything where the movement is there, that is, we call it as a match on action. Which editing technique is used to transition between scenes by gradually darkening the image? We call it as a fade out. Everybody knows this. What is the purpose of cut-in shot? To focus on a specific detail within the scene which you may not otherwise notice. Okay, so to underline that part. What is the aesthetic purpose of wipe transition? To evoke a dynamic or a bold scene change. So these are the certain questions which I have formulated. Very, very basic question connected with the grammar of the film. Now we are coming to this is the fourth section. Fifth section is basically about the sound. They also expect certain things related to sound. These are not the exhaustive list, but I have picked up certain questions where some idea you will understand what kind of question they might ask. Some are numerical kind of a question, some division divided by so and so. Those you have to practice. But anyway, which of the following is the unit of sound frequency. We call it as a hertz. It is being taught in the physics. These are basically physics related questions, but you should know as a cinema student. So hertz is the unit by which we measure. What is the speed of sound in air at room temperature? So this is 343. Even if it is not 343, 340 is being mentioned. You should be very clear, but it should be roughly around 340. Okay, not 100 and 440 or 1500. So that much you should be very clear. Which frequency range is typically considered as a mid-range? So mid-frequency range, we call it as a, sometime if you see what is a hearing range of a human being, what is the hearing range of animal. I have not formulated those questions, but do check out the hearing range of animals and hearing range of human being. So here it is called mid-frequency range, which is between 500 to 2000. We call it as a mid frequency. Decibel, as everybody knows, is a sound pressure level to measure the whatever. Whenever we talk about the sound level, we talk about in terms of decibel. So dB is the measuring. So dB stand for sound pressure level, measure the intensity or loudness of sound. Please try to understand, and often refer to the sound pressure level, SPL we call it as a. Which phenomena causes sound to reflect off the surface? We call it as a reverberation, because of which you see the persistence of sound due to multiple reflection coming from the various surfaces. These are various properties are given: absorption, reverberation, diffraction, transmission. So you need to understand all that. Which microphone pattern picks up the sound from all the direction? Omnidirectional kind of a microphone is required for that. Which type of microphone require phantom power? We call it as a condenser microphone. Also, I mentioned 48 volt, because sometimes some crazy guy might put a question like that. How much is a phantom power is required? So I've just mentioned there. What does an audio interface do? It converts the analog signal into the digital. Which cable type is most commonly used for professional audio? It is called XLR cable. What sound waves have? These are the property of sound. We call it as amplitude, frequency, and wavelength. So these are the confusing question, but I prepared it just because sometimes they expect you to understand the basic physics. When we change feeble sound to loud sound, now this is a very, very important question. If you do not know, you might give a wrong answer to it. Feeble to the loud. So what exactly we do? We change the amplitude. Okay. So they have given the frequency, wavelength, amplitude, velocity. So you have to be very careful what exactly you're going to choose when you say sound which is feeble to loud sound. Because increasing the amplitude of a sound wave increases its loudness, while frequency, wavelength, and velocity remain unchanged. When sound travels through air, the air particles vibrate they have given various options. So correct option is vibrate along the direction of propagation. And you must have studied in the physics of the 7th standard when the sound is being introduced. It's a very fundamental question. Now, sometime they might ask you a little tricky question. Let's say, for example, here it is not mentioned. MKH416 is manufactured by which company? So it's a Schneider. It's a shotgun microphone used very often in the professional setup. I just reminded to me. So MKH416. How do you remember this 416? 4 plus 1 is equal to 5, but add 1 to it and remember 6. So 416 is the name of the microphone, used very often in the industry, roughly cost around 60,000 to 70 or 80,000 rupees. I don't know the exact price, but that is the range of that price. So MKH416 is a star microphone manufactured by the Schneider company. Period of a vibrating body of the frequency 100, let's say. So this, what could be the question? So if you know the way it need to be calculated, so it is 1 by f. So accordingly you can calculate. So this formula you need to remember, otherwise you will not. It's a simple question, but a bit technical if you don't understand the formula. A man, now this you need to understand, and tomorrow morning go through this carefully. A man standing in front of a hill hear the reflection of his sound after 2 seconds is standing at a distance of so much from the hill. How it is being calculated? The formula is being given over there. Okay. So these are the 50 questions I have formulated, but there could be many more questions connected. Doppler effect, what Doppler effect does. So certain questions which are more technical in nature, but it was taught into the 9th standard or 8th standard of the audio. But these are the some basic question I found that might interest to the people who are formulating the question. So this was the 5th section. Now we are moving to the 6th section, which is the scintigraphy part. Now, these 47 questions, remember they ask you, they mention over there in the sample paper, when it is a one stop over, what does it mean? So, if you don't understand the word called stop, it means you don't understand the exposure. If you don't understand the exposure, it means they are interested in knowing the more about basic photography, a fundamental which a person of ordinary interest should know, particularly when you are applying to FTI Pune. So I picked up certain basic question from the cinematography. Those of you who are appearing in the cinematography, they might find it a little kiddish, but people who are not from cinematography background, those who are from editing background, from direction applicant, it is more important for them to understand that. For a cinematography people, it might be very rudimental. So what is the, but I have very carefully, being coming from a cinematography background, I have selected these questions from a very ordinary point of view. Considering that you are not going to be a cinematographer, you are a direction student and how much you should know about these fundamentals. So these are basic things today, everybody should know it, particularly when you are applying to FTI, SRFTI, because they have formulated section in which they are looking for such kind of knowledge from everybody's point of view, which I think should also make a sense, because if you're coming to cinema, you should need to understand all these grammar, terminology, and some basic understanding today when YouTube is available easily to everyone. So what is the primary function of a cinematography lens? To focus the light on the camera sensor. What type of lens has a fixed focal length? We call it as a prime lenses or block lenses. 50 mm, 100 mm, 75 mm. These lenses are called block lenses or prime lenses. What does focal length primarily affect in cinematography? The angle of view and the magnification of the image will change as the focal length would change. A length with a focal length of 50 mm is considered as a normal lens. What is the effect of using wide angle lenses? So expand the field of view, everything becomes sharp from the foreground to the background. Which lens type is best for isolating a subject with a blurred background? We call it as a telephoto lens because of the depth, shallow depth of field, it blurs the background and we call it as a blurred background. So telephoto lens are required for that. What does the aperture of a lens control? It controls the amount of light entering into the lens and also the depth of field. So this is the correct answer. What does an f-stop number like f2.8 indicate? So it means it is a aperture, and 2.8 means large aperture, which means more amount of light would enter with the 2.8 rather than the 4 or 5.6. Bigger the number, smaller the hole, and hence less light. What is a t-stop in cinematography lenses? It is a measure of lens speed based on the light transmission. In cinematography, we use t-stop. In the still photography, we use f-stop. What is the color temperature measured in? We call it as a Kelvin. So, what is the typical color temperature of daylight? It keeps changing from morning 2000, 3000, 4000 and becomes stable at around 5600. More or less, this is the average color temperature of a daylight. What is the color temperature of tungsten light? We call it as a 3200 degree. And why it is called tungsten? Because tungsten is the filament because of which in a home wherever you use yellow kind of a light, which is a tungsten light. What does the color temperature of 7500 degree typically represent? It means it is an overcast sky, or maybe it is depend upon the alternative they have given. Here the four alternative, if you need to choose, it will be a overcast sky. If the alternative changes, instead of overcast sky, if it is, let's say, shooting in a snow area, that could be a correct alternative if that would have been given. What is the purpose of a neutral density filter? So neutral density filter cut down the intensity of light without affecting the color temperature of the light. If it is a daylight, it will remain daylight. If it is tungsten light, it will remain tungsten light. If it is a red color light, it will remain the red. Color temperature is not affected by the ND filter. ND3, ND6, ND9, these are the numbers. We in day-to-day language, we call it as a ND3, but actually it is a 0.3, 0.6, 0.9. Which filter is used to correct color temperature for tungsten thing? So, which, let me read it correctly. Which filter is used to correct color temperature for tungsten light when shooting in a daylight? Now, what they are saying is your film is balanced for tungsten light, but you're shooting in a daylight. Earlier, there used to be two kind of film. Even now, there are sensors which are balanced for tungsten light, daylight. But earlier, the cassette used to be tungsten light or daylight. So if you're using a tungsten light, balanced film into a daylight. So you need to use the 80B. A or B, there are a little variation. So 80 is the filter, blue color filter, which will cut down the yellow part and your color will be correctly reproduced. So this is a little tricky for those people who don't understand this 80 and 85. But as a cinema student, you are supposed to know. Reverse will be the case. 85 will be the filter if you are doing the reverse. Now, what does the polarization filter primarily do? It reduces the reflections and glare. So whenever there is a surface from where the reflection is coming, particularly the glass reflection, I would say, not the metallic surface reflection. So it cut down the reflection. There's this very interesting sequence from the Roman Polanski's film called Knife in the Water, in which opening sequence they use the this polarizing filter to cut down the reflection from the glass to show the faces of those two people who are sitting inside the car. Very, very creative use of a polarizing filter I have ever seen in any film. What is the function of UV filter? Most of the time it act as a protection for the lens, but it do some purpose. Also, it cut down the ultraviolet light. Which filter creates a soft dreamy effect in a cinematography? We call it as a diffusing filter. What is the main advantage of a cine camera over DSLR? Obviously, super dynamic range and color depth. Those who understand cinematography, they will understand better what I'm talking about. So cinema cameras are more expensive because of that. Which cine camera features a critical for capturing fast moving object? We call it as a high frame rate. Normally it is a 24 frame per second, but then we have a 48, 96 frame, up to 200. Earlier when the ARRI 3, ARRI 435 camera were there, they have a limitation of using up to 125 frame or maybe 200. But today there are camera like Phantom, which can give you 500 frame per second or 600 frame. So slow motion is the basic purpose. High frame rate. What is the typical sensor size for professional camera? Is a Super 35 is the latest in terms of professional sensors. What does the term crop factor refer to the cine cameras? Is the ratio of the sensor size to the full frame sensor. They might ask some tricky question like that because it is very often used today. What is the exposure in cinematography? The amount of light captured by the sensor. We call it as a exposure. Which component of the exposure triangle control the light sensitivity? We call it as a film speed, ASA or ISO. This is among the three factors which control the exposure. But here it is talking about the control light sensitivity. So which means film speed. He is talking about the film. What does a faster shutter speed do? It captures the motion. So it freezes the motion when there is a football game or cricket or some jump. We uses the to freeze the action. We use the higher shutter speed 500, 250, 1000, depend 1 by 1000 of a second. This is not 1000 second, but it is 1 by 1000 part of a second. What is the purpose of 18% gray card in the cinematography? To calibrate the exposure. This much is enough for those who are not from cinematography. And for general cinema knowledge, that much is enough. What is an 80% gray card typically used for? It is used for placing in front of the lens to set the exposure. What happens if a scene is underexposed? It will look like dark scene. What will happen if it is overexposed? It look too much bright, causing loss in the detail of highlight area. What is the dynamic range of a camera? It is the range of brightness level it can capture, which means if there is a outside area is there where the bright areas are there, can you see the detail over there, or it is a burnout? That we call it as a dynamic range. Very often you will see this thing Many people are selling their camera. Just give me a moment. Okay. So we are done editing this. Okay, we were here. What is the dynamic range of a camera? Uh, so I've just told you that. What is a stop in cinematography? This is they ask over there. One stop, two stop. If it is one stop over, one two stop over, three stop over, that is the what is the purpose of that? So what is a stop in cinematography? It is basically either you double the exposure or you cut down the exposure by half. Half and doubling of a light expose is called one stop. So one stop means one double. If it is two stop, then it is four times. So double and half is the game. This is a little tricky for you people to answer it if you are not from photography student, but I have mentioned over here, so now you should be understandable. Which lens is the best for close-up cinematography? It is called a macro lens. It is meant for tiny object like insects and flower and things like that. What does a shallow depth of field achieve in a shot? We blur the background and isolate the subject. What is the typical frame rate for a cinematography film? 24 frame per second. For television, it is 25 frame per second. So that's how we frame per second is, everybody should know it. That's why this question is being formulated. What is the purpose of white balance in cinematography? To accurately color representation. Colors should be correctly reproduced. That's why we do the white balance in the television video as well as the digital cinematography. Digital cinematography don't do the white balance in that sense of the term, but there is always you can choose the white balance you want. A little warmer, little bluish, all the options are there. But earlier in a video camera, there was a button which you press under the condition and white balance was done. Which setting is used to compensate for low light condition? It is a higher ASO is required, not 100 ASA film, but 400, 800 ASA film is required. What is the anamorphic lens does in cinematography? It squeezes the image and compresses and decompresses. So exactly the CinemaScope format is 1:2.3. So bokeh is the term which is very often used today. So it creates a very special kind of bokeh of the background by blurring the background. So depend upon the what kind of options are given to produce a widescreen image. That much is enough with a unique bouquet. Why unique bouquet? Because it look very compressed kind of a thing. And CinemaScope is not many people like that format, but this anamorphic lens, whenever there's a question like that, it means they're talking about the CinemaScope. So 1:1.23 is the aspect ratio of the length and breadth of the rectangular frame. So what does a graduated ND filter do? Sometimes it is used for sky. If the sky is too bright, so you use the ND369 graduated. From the top it is there and the bottom it is clear. So landscape where the mountains are there and after that it is not required. So graduated ND filter reduces the light in a specific part of the frame, which is normally the top part, which is the sky part. Very critical to use it so that you should not feel the jerk. What is the effect of using a high ISO setting? Which means the film is higher sensitivity is there and increase the noise in terms of if you use the high sensitivity film, there will be noise. But there was a technology like T-grain technology which reduces the noise in the image. But again, basic noise would still remain the boiling kind of effect, we call it. Which lens characteristic affect the bokeh quality? Please note down this carefully, this question, even the cinematography student also. What is the question? Which lens characteristic affect the bokeh quality? Which means focal length, aperture blade shape, sensor size, and shutter speed. In these options, it is the aperture blade shape affect the bokeh quality. What kind of bokeh is going to be? You will feel in the image. So this is very, very tricky question even for cinematography student. So be careful when you answer this. What is the purpose of a matte box on a cinema camera? to hold the filter as well as to reduce the lens flare. Unnecessary light, non-image forming light entering into the lens is not required. We call it as a glare, and which causes the flare. So to cut down the glare, or you can say to reduce the lens flare, which is the effect of the glare. What is the typical resolution 4K cinema camera? Please 1920 1080, that is full HD 2K. Now here it is 4K, so this is a resolution 4096 into 2160. Mug it up, write it down. They might ask a question like this, and this kind of numerical question would be asked, because you need to 4K, 4K, 4K has no meaning till you understand what exactly it is. You are not a layman, you are supposed to be a filmmaker, so you need to understand all these kind of a thing. What does a fast lens refer to? A lens which is having a widest opening, 1.4, 1.2 sometime. You can find a lens like that. So they might give a numerical value, 1.4, 1.8, 1.2.0, and they can ask which among the is the fastest lens. So fastest lens would be having the 1 point lowest number, whether it's 1.2, 1.4, or 1.6, whatever it is. So comparative, they might give you 3 numbers and ask you which is the fastest lens. So which means widest opening. What is a chromatic aberration? Basically, chromatic means color. So anything to do with the color is chromatic. So color fringes due to the light dispersion. This is a little more technical, but they can ask you. This is about the aberration, which is a defect in the lens. So what is the purpose of follow focus system? To keep the focus correctly always. So to precisely control the lens focus, there is a mechanism by which you do the follow focus. It is a round kind of a thing attached to the thing. And today there is a separate remote control is also comes over there by which you could do the follow focus. So follow focus system is required to do the focusing correctly all the time. What does a histogram display in the cinematography? It is the exposure level in the image for dark and highlight area. A bit technical, but it can be asked, because in the still photography cameras, you do see the histogram over there whenever you using the, let's say for example, this Photoshop, there is a histogram over there. So bit technical, but very common. A very, very important thing, you will very often hear this word called raw format. Raw में shoot कर रहे हैं हम लोग. Why you do the raw shoot? Because there is a greater flexibility in the post production. Later on, you can change whatever medium you want it to convert. So raw is always considered as the best way to shoot a image. So these are general nature technical question connected with the cinematography. Today, I am also going to use little more complex from the physics point of view for everyone, because they expect you to understand the basic physics, which is basically what we call it as this wavelength business. So again, getting into the little physics of 7th standard, they might ask this question. I don't know why I have this feeling that this Vibgyor business you need to understand. So violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, starting from top to bottom. It is called, we all have done this experiment through a pin of a glass prism. Now what you need to remember is the visible spectrum, the wavelength. So 380 to 750 is the range of the Vibgyor. They might ask you in terms of now the tricky part over here is the unit, whether it's angstrom or whether it is nano. So here, these are the various smallest units is called angstrom. On the top of A, it is a small dot is being mentioned over there. I think this word is being picked up from the Swedish language, but I'm not 100% sure. So angstrom is the unit, and then it has a nanometer. So either it will be nanometer or angstrom. So here you could see this 380 to 750 is the unit range of which they can ask. So nanometer and all that. Nanometer is also represented by nm. So this, whenever if they are saying the 740 and this number, it means it is a nanometer. So here, this is a little bit of angstrom conversion they have given over there, but nanometer is easy to remember. This particular range, which is I have already mentioned on the top, 380 to 750. So visible spectrum, then there is a ultraviolet, and then there is a infrared. So this side is known as the infrared on the higher side of the nanometer, and the lower side it is called UV, ultraviolet. So you need to remember this range. They might ask you 100 to 400 is called ultraviolet, visible, infrared, what exactly it is called. There you could see from 800 to up to 1000, 1800 till here it is more easy to remember. But these are various range. Now here is very important to remember the red wavelength of 620 to 780. Why? Because why red signal is there? Because it is easy to recognize. Again, there is a green signal is also there. So why these colors are used over there? Because of they are toward the higher side of the wavelength. So in the signal, whether you see the orange, red and green, why? Because they are toward the higher side of the wavelength. This question can be asked. This is a simple formula and easy to remember. They might ask you a question like this. So frequency, wave speed, and lambda. These are the three terms over there. I will share this PDF file with you. If they ask you what is the wavelength of this, then you can easily calculate. Such kind of question can be asked. It is simple mathematics, but if you don't remember the frequency is equal to wavelength divided by wave speed divided by wavelength, you will not be able to calculate. So such kind of simple calculation question can be asked. So these are the various questions I have formulated. It's very easy for you to remember it. So tomorrow morning, please do spend some time to do this little calculation thing. I'm not wasting my time over here for these things. I'm going to the VIBGYOR again. Violet indigo, what color, what does the VIBGYOR stand for in the color spectrum? Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. That sequence you need to remember. Which color in the VIBGYOR is shortest wavelength? I told you up there is a D is the correct answer, violet. It is toward the below side. Red is the highest one. Which color of the VIBGYOR is the longest wavelength? As I said, red. Which visible spectrum? What is the correct order of the color from shortest to longest wavelength? Shortest matlab chota. Violet, indigo, blue. This is the correct order. So read the question carefully before you are in a rush to answer it. Don't rush to answer the question quickly. Read the question, read the alternatives correctly, and then try to answer it. What natural phenomena display VIBGYOR? Is the rainbow, where you can easily figure it out why that colors are being shown over there on the rainy day. After the rain. Which of these colors is not a part of the VIBGYOR? As I said, that white light consists of VIBGYOR. White light is not a part of VIBGYOR. When you put these together, it becomes a white light. What we see in a rainbow as VIBGYOR is basically due to the various options are given over there due to the dispersion of sunlight in a raindrop. They have given you reflection, diffraction, scattering. So you have to be very, very clear what exactly going to be the correct answer. A very tricky question, but can be asked. That's why I marked it yellow for you people. What physical property of the light causes the splitting into VIBGYOR? It is a dispersion phenomena of the light. Again, similar thing is also there when you see that pencil is bent into the water because the traveling of the light would cause the dispersion. Which color of VIBGYOR is most refracted? Just a moment. All these, they will not be loaded. It will be given into your group. So you can download from there. Unnecessarily, I do not want to waste the time. So don't worry about this. Concentrate on the questions. Which color of the VIBGYOR is most refracted in the prism? Now you could see is a little tricky question because it is a dispersion happening. So which is the maximum bending happening is for violet, not for the red. Red bending is less. More bending is for the violet. A tricky question. Please answer it correctly if it is being asked. Because all these people who are sitting there as a professor, in those time when I went to a FTI, the minimum qualification was 10 plus 2 with science. Today, that qualification is no more because there is always improvement on the education system. People fought for it. Now that thing is being removed from the cinematography part. But earlier, 10 plus 2 with science and graduation in any discipline was the reason. So these people who are sitting there, Samiran and all, they are science background people at least till the 12th standard. So they might be inclined to put question like this. Which color of Vibgyor is the least reflected? Again, it is a red. Color violet in the Vibgyor sequence correspond approximately to which wavelength? I have told you over there the numerical thing. So it starts from 400 to 750. So 400 is the correct answer for it. This is a numerical question, but you need to remember this range of very, very important to remember these numbers, particularly these question number 12. What is the red light used in fog lamps or danger signal? I told you it has a longest wavelength and scatter less. Scatter less is a very important thing to remember. I've told you up there also the in dispersion through a prism, which factor causes different color to refract at a different angle? It is a different refractive index for different wavelength. This is a little physics thing. You don't need to remember what exactly is the refractive index of the different wavelength, but you need to remember that much, that a refractive index for different wavelength is different, and hence there is a different level of refraction. Refractive words you need to remember, particularly these direction people. You will be not very familiar with these words, but now you need to, at least you till you crack the exam. Which color of light has the highest frequency? Not wavelength. He's not asking a wavelength. It's the opposite of that in the Vibgyor. So if I am saying violet is the lowest wavelength, but it has a highest frequency, it is opposite of the wavelength. So if he wanted to make your life little difficult, he will not ask the wavelength, he will ask the frequency which is opposite. If white light passes through two identical prism arranged opposite, a tricky question. Forming a prism pair, what will be the emerging light? White light. White enter करेगी, उसके बाद डिस्पर्शन होगा, डिस्पर्शन फिर ऊपर की तरफ वापस उसको व्हाइट लाइट बना देगा. सो इट इज इट्स लाइक कंप्रेशन डीकंप्रेशन. जैसे सिनेमास्कोप में क्या होता है, सिनेमास्कोप इमेज कंप्रेस करती है शूटिंग के टाइम में और प्रोजेक्शन के टाइम में डीकंप्रेस कर देती है. तो जो उसका प्रिज्म की वजह से जो अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं ऊपर पूरा का पूरा जो ये पूरा फिनोमेना चल रहा है, इसका अपोजिट जो होगा, बिकॉज ऑफ विच डिस्पर्शन हैपन्स एंड देन अगेन डिस्पर्शन कंपोजिट इनटू द व्हाइट लाइट. सो दो प्रिज्म को अगर मिला दिया तो क्या होने वाला है? व्हाइट लाइट निकलने वाली है, ना कि उसमें से विबग्योर का फीलिंग आएगा. ये लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे, द सेकेंड प्रिज्म रिकम्बाइंस द डिस्पर्स लाइट इनटू ए व्हाइट लाइट. ट्रिकी क्वेश्चन है, पूछा जा सकता है, बट मोर फॉर द सिनेमेटोग्राफी स्टूडेंट. एंड ऑल्सो व्हाई डज द स्काई अपीयर ब्लू मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम? बहुत बार पूछा गया है क्वेश्चन, तो ये आपको पता होना चाहिए. रेले का स्कैटरिंग इफेक्ट क्या है शॉर्टर वेवलेंथ के लिए? इज मोर इफेक्टिव. इन विच मीडियम इज द डिस्पर्शन ऑफ लाइट मोस्ट प्रोमिनेंट? अगेन ग्लास के अंदर जो है डिस्पर्शन ज्यादा होता है, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ विच यू कुड फील द ऑल दिस विबग्योर थिंग हैपनिंग ओवर देयर. तीनों मीडियम का दे रखा है, होता हर एक के अंदर है, बट सबसे ज्यादा होता है ग्लास के अंदर. वैक्यूम में नहीं होता है क्योंकि मीडियम चाहिए उसके अंदर. वैक्यूम इज नॉट ए मीडियम. ओके, एयर इज ए मीडियम, वाटर इज ए मीडियम, ग्लास इज ए मीडियम, बट वैक्यूम इज नॉट ए मीडियम. सो यू नीड ए मीडियम टू डू द डिस्पर्शन फिनोमिना.
आई थिंक सर वाटर में होता है.
हाँ जी, वैक्यूम की बात कर रहा हूं मैं, वैक्यूम की बात कर रहा हूं, वाटर की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं मैं. वाटर
क्या
में तो
बोल
ही है. वाटर में जो दिखता है आपको, पेंसिल टेढ़ी हो रही है, क्यों हो रही है? बिकॉज ऑफ दैट. बट वैक्यूम क्या, वैक्यूम का मतलब क्या है? देयर इज नथिंग, देयर इज नो मीडियम. सो टू हैव दैट फिनोमेना देयर शुड बी ए मीडियम. ओनली तभी स्कैटरिंग होगा जब कोई मीडियम ही नहीं है, तो स्कैटरिंग कहां से होगा? तो ये कवर होता है हमारा बेसिक क्वेश्चन कनेक्टेड विद द वेवलेंथ, प्रिज्म वगैरह, ये सब जो है. इसमें ऊपर थोड़े डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन है ये, बट पढ़ने पड़ेंगे आपको एग्जाम के लिए. ये कलर टेम्परेचर वाले जो क्वेश्चन है ये मैंने आपको बता ही दिया है, इसमें थोड़े से और डिटेल में है. आई डो नॉट वांट टू वेस्ट द टाइम ऑन दैट. तो कुछ सिनेमेटोग्राफी के क्वेश्चन है, ये बेसिकली फाइल वहां से ही ली है मैंने, बट बिकॉज ये वेवलेंथ वेवलेंथ का चक्करबाजी है, तो इसलिए मैंने ये क्वेश्चन ऊपर के छोड़ दिए हैं. आई हैव कवर्ड द बिलो क्वेश्चन विच आर मच मोर रेलेवेंट फॉर एवरीवन. तो ये हो गया. अब मैं कुछ वो चीजें थोड़ा सा, एक मैंने मेरा लेक्चर है उसको आप थोड़ा सा देख लीजिएगा अगर वो मिल पाता है तो. ये मैं क्विकली रन थ्रू कर लेता हूँ इसके अंदर से. ये लंबी चौड़ी 3-4 पीडीएफ पीपीटी हैं. पूछ सकते हैं कि किस फोटोग्राफ में आपको क्या दिखाई दे रहा है. अब ये जो सारी की सारी इमेजेस हैं, इसके अंदर अगर कोई पूछेगा क्या दिख रहा है आपको, तो ये हार्मनी जो वर्ड है वो आपको इसमें दिखाई देगी। इस वी कॉल इट एज ए हार्मनी। इसका हाई कंट्रास्ट इमेज भी दे रखा है यहाँ पर। तो ये पूछा गया है एफटीआई एंट्रेंस एग्जाम में सिनेमाटोग्राफी के अंदर पर्टिकुलरली, बट ये हार्मनी वगैरह ये सब जो है आप लोगों को भी थोड़ा आइडिया होना चाहिए। तो इफ दे विल गिव यू दिस इमेज एंड आस्क यू व्हाट इज देयर, सो यू शुड बी एबल टू टेल व्हाट आर देयर। देयर इज अ वन कॉल्ड हार्मनी, देन अभी और भी दिखाऊंगा मैं आपको अलग अलग थीम के अंडर में। तो इसमें ये सब जो एलिमेंट हैं, क्या एलिमेंट दिखाई दे रहा है आपको, तो दे कैन आस्क विच एलिमेंट यू आर एबल टू सी। दीज आर द वेरियस इमेजेस एंड पूछा केवल यही जाएगा कि इसमें कौन सा एलिमेंट आपको दिखाई दे रहा है। सो आई विल शेयर दिस पीपीटी विद यू गाइस, ठीक है। तो ये हार्मनी का वो है। फिर ये कि बैलेंस का है। बैलेंस, बैलेंस क्या होता है, बैलेंस भी अलग अलग टाइप का है। जैसे ये है, ठीक है, वेयर एग्जैक्टली यू सी द बैलेंस, कि अगर ये आदमी बीच में ना हो तो ये बैलेंस वाला फील जो है खत्म हो जाए। इसमें अगर ये आदमी बीच में ना होता तो you will not be able to figure out. But again, the long one balancing the small one and the center part is acting like a, जैसे वेव जो स्केल होता है मेजरिंग, जो वेट मेजर करते हो उस टाइप का ये एक फील इसमें आपको दिखाई दे रहा है। लुक एट दिस। ये एक बुक खरीदा था मैंने, बहुत महंगा किताब, वहां से सब ये आपको गूगल में नहीं मिलेगा, ये सब जो कटिंग वटिंग जो मैंने लगा रखी है इसके अंदर। दिस इज अ बुक आई हैव बॉट एंड फ्रॉम वेयर आई हैव यूज these images. So this is an example of balance. You could see the, of course this is very clear. Now this you will not be able to see where the balance is. So you have to read these images. I will share the PPTs of these thing with you tonight, and whenever you find time you should be able to read them. बट यही पूछेंगे कि इसमें आपको कौन सा एलिमेंट आपको दिखाई दे रहा है। सो दीज आर 25 इमेजेस फॉर द बैलेंस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। आएगा जरूर ऐसा फोटोग्राफ, क्योंकि ये लोग जो है दे आर मोर इंक्लाइन टुवर्ड द विजुअल, जो मुझे समझ आया है एग्जामिनेशन पैटर्न के अंदर। तो नाउ दिस इज एग्जांपल ऑफ हार्मनी जो हम लोगों ने अभी देख ही लिया आपको। दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ कॉन्ट्रास्ट। Now you could see in terms of, now this is contrast in terms of different sense of the term. There is a water and somebody is lying over there. So where does the contrast can be achieved? In many ways. Here the man asleep on a beach creates a contrasting mental image of what is expected. The shore background, while the person sleeping stands out in the foreground. The sense of contrast is also perceived if the waves are viewed as lines and the human figure as a dot. तो ये एक्सप्लेनेशन इसके अंदर लिखा हुआ है। तो ये आपको थोड़ा अभी फील पकड़ना पड़ेगा कि इसमें कॉन्ट्रास्ट कहां से दिख रहा है आपको। जैसे ये इमेज है, वाटर वर्सेस स्टॉर्म, समथिंग विच इज मूविंग एंड समथिंग विच इज वेरी स्टेबल। तो ये थोड़ा सा आप लोग जो है इसको थोड़ा पढ़ेंगे तो ज़्यादा समझ आएगा इसको। और जो है ये पीपीटी में आपके साथ वहाँ पर डाल दूंगा। इसका मैंने पढ़ के रीडिंग किया हुआ है पूरा का पूरा वीडियो लेक्चर, बट ये वो वीडियो लेक्चर उन लोगों के पास होगा जिन्होंने वीडियो लेक्चर्स खरीदे हैं, हर एक किसी के पास नहीं होगा। तो दिस आई विल शेयर विद यू पीपल। एंड कंट्रास्ट के अलावा एक रिदम नाम का एक शब्द होता है, रिदम। अब फोटोग्राफ में रिदम कहाँ से दिखाई देगी? रिदम पेस की हमने बात की है एडिटिंग के अंदर, बट यहाँ पर यू कैन फील दैट रिदम काइंड ऑफ ए थिंग। द मोशन ऑफ द स्विंग सजेस्ट ए सर्कुलर मूवमेंट। द विजुअल प्रोग्रेशन इन द साइज ऑफ द पीपल इन द स्विंग एंड द स्पेसिंग बिटवीन देम एनहांसेस द रिदम। तो आपको कुछ इस टाइप का फोटोग्राफ दिखाई देता है तो आपको वो पूछ सकता है कि इसमें क्या दिखाई दे रहा है, रिदम दिखाई दे रहा है, हार्मनी दिखाई दे रही है, बैलेंस दिखाई दे रहा है, क्या दिखाई दे रहा है। सो यू शुड बी एबल टू आंसर सच काइंड ऑफ ए क्वेश्चन।
What is the name of the book?
सी अगेन, नेम ऑफ द बुक तो मेरे को याद नहीं है, बट ये मैंने खरीदा था किसी जमाने में। जमाना मतलब याद नहीं मुझे, बट ये महंगा किताब था, कुछ 700-800 रुपए का, शायद ज़्यादा महंगा भी रहा हो। कॉफी टेबल टाइप का बुक था ये, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा तो आई बॉट इट, बट आई रियली डोंट रिमेम्बर द नेम।
सर ये डायरेक्शन स्टूडेंट्स को भी पढ़नी चाहिए
बेटा
वाली
पता
वीडियो।
होना चाहिए डायरेक्टर को भी, डायरेक्टर को नहीं पता होगा तो कैसे होगा? ये सब बेसिक चीजें हैं, ये दीज आर द बेसिक थिंग्स। FTI and SRFTI believe that the visual sense, we call it as a visual sense, डायरेक्शन स्टूडेंट को भी पता होनी चाहिए। डायरेक्टर ही कैमरे का फ्रेम लगाता है, सिनेमाटोग्राफर उसको एडजस्ट करता है, उसको लाइटिंग करता है। डायरेक्टर को ये सब चीजें नहीं पता, तो उनके हिसाब से तुम डायरेक्शन कोर्स करने लायक, तुम सिनेमा में आने लायक नहीं। अकॉर्डिंग टू देम, दिस इज व्हाट दे बिलीव इन। तो ये इमेजेस हैं, विजुअल लिटरेसी इसको बोला जाता है। फर्स्ट ईयर में पढ़ाया भी जाएगा आपको, बट अभी बेसिक लेवल पे आपको पता होना चाहिए कि इसके अंदर रिदम कहाँ दिखाई दे रहा है। अब ये बड़ा टेंजिबल वो नहीं है कि एक पेन है आपको पकड़ के दिखा दिया। तो अब ये फील कैसे पकड़ में आएगा, जब आप जो है फोटोग्राफ को उस तरीके से देखोगे। उस फोटोग्राफ को जब ऐसे देखोगे तो आपको समझ आएगा। इसीलिए मैंने उसका जो एक्सप्लेनेशन वाला पार्ट है उसका भी इमेज जो है काट के लगाया हुआ है, जिससे आप जब इसको पढ़ें तो आपके पल्ले पड़े कि ये क्या चल रहा है इसके अंदर। ठीक है जी। तो ये सब पीपीटीज हैं, ये मैं लोड कर दूंगा वहां पर आपके ग्रुप में। जो जिन लोगों ने ज्वाइन किया हुआ है ये ग्रुप, जो क्या बोलते हैं, जो क्लासरूम कोचिंग के स्टूडेंट हैं, उनको तो वीडियो लेक्चर वहाँ मिला ही हुआ है, तो उसमें लोड करने की जरूरत नहीं है। बट जो जेनरिक जो लोग केवल ये 300 रुपीज़ वाले लोग हैं, उनके लिए मैं ये लोड कर दूंगा। तो ये आप जो है इसको थोड़ा देखेंगे पढ़ेंगे तो आपको और जो है इसको समझ आएगा। तो आप पूछ लीजिए। 1 घंटा 10 मिनट हो चुका है। दूध के हिसाब से काम नहीं होता है, बट फिर भी आई एम टायर्ड नाउ, ऑलमोस्ट फॉर 3.5 आवर आई एम टॉकिंग। तो अगर कुछ आपको पूछना है तो पूछ लीजिए। कल का रिवीजन का डे है आपके पास, और ये वीडियो जो है आज रात को जैसे ही अभी अवेलेबल होंगे तो मैं आज रात को ही इसको यूट्यूब पे लोड करके आपको अर्ली मॉर्निंग में आपको लिंक जो है 100% मिल जाएगा।
एक्सक्यूज मी सर, ये पीडीएफ आप कब तक लोड करेंगे?
पीडीएफ लोड मैं अभी कर दूंगा, थोड़ी देर में खाना खाने जाऊंगा तो मैं रात के अभी जैसे ही खाना खा के आऊंगा तो आई वुड बी एबल टू लोड द पीडीएफ।
Sir, what are some of the topics regarding screenplay writing that is important, you know?
बेटा, जिन लोगों ने पेपर दिया है एफटीआई का, आपकी बार
हाँ
डिफिकल्ट पेपर आया, वहां पे चेकऑफ की स्टोरी दे दी उन लोगों ने, उसमें
हाँ
पूछा
हाँ हाँ।
बहुत कुछ जो है आपकी बार उसी टाइप के पेपर आते हैं बेसिकली। बट डायरेक्शन में क्या है, क्योंकि ऑब्जेक्टिव है तो उन्होंने सैंपल पेपर लगा रखा है, वो एक अच्छी बात है। तो आपको एक आइडिया लग जाएगा उसके अंदर कि किस टाइप की चीजें पूछी जा सकती हैं
तो
कंटिन्यूटी से।
उधर तो बहुत बेसिक चीजें, मतलब जो सैंपल पेपर है, स्क्रीन प्ले राइटिंग रिगार्डिंग बहुत बेसिक चीजें।
स्क्रीन प्ले राइटिंग का ज्यादा उसमें नहीं आएगा, उसमें डायरेक्शन से कनेक्टेड एलिमेंट आ सकते हैं, जैसे क्या टेलीप्रॉम्प्टर क्या होता है। ठीक है जी। अब वो
हाँ।
कंटिन्यूटी के बारे में पूछा जा सकता है, क्लैप के बारे में पूछा जा सकता है।
हम्म।
अब मैं आपसे पूछ लेता हूँ, क्लैप जब देते हैं तो पहले क्या, सबसे पहले क्या बोलता है आदमी, बोलिए। चलो, कौन आदमी पूछा है ये क्वेश्चन?
मैं शुभम।
शुभम
शुभम।
मलिक, बताइए। क्लैप जब देते हैं तो कैसे बोलता है आदमी? क्लैप देने से पहले क्या बोलता है, बोलो।
सीन नंबर बोलते हैं और टेक बोलते हैं।
ये अब यही है ना, ये हवा में चल रहे हो तुम लोग, तुमने जिंदगी में कभी ठीक से पढ़ा ही नहीं है।
हाँ।
तुमने कभी क्लैप के बारे में ठीक से पढ़ा नहीं है। क्लैप में क्या बोला जाता है वहां पे? गोइंग फॉर टेक, पहला बोला जाता है रोल साउंड,
हाँ।
है। उसके बाद बोला जाता है रोलिंग, साउंड रिकॉर्डिस्ट बोलता है रोलिंग। उसके बाद बोलते हैं रोल कैमरा, तो कैमरामैन बोलता है रोलिंग। उसके बाद जो क्लैप कंटिन्यूटी वाला आदमी जो पकड़ के खड़ा हुआ होता है वो बोलता है शॉट नंबर सो एंड सो, सीन नंबर सो एंड सो, टेक नंबर सो एंड सो, एंड देन ही बैंग्स द क्लैप एंड गो आउट। क्योंकि तुमने कभी जिंदगी में परवाह नहीं करी इस चीज को सुनने की, तो दिस इज अ सीक्वेंस। अब रात
सर
को
रोल
खोपड़ी खुजाना, लिसन टू मी फर्स्ट। रात को खोपड़ी खुजाना और सोचना कि उसमें पहले रोल साउंड क्यों बोला जाता है, रोल कैमरा क्यों नहीं बोला जाता है।
यस सर।
सर
उसके
वो
बाद पूछना,
क्योंकि ऑडियो भी मैच करनी होती है ना जब
नहीं
हम
नहीं
पोस्ट
नहीं
प्रोडक्शन
नहीं
में रहते
नहीं
हैं।
नहीं, इतना आसान होता ना मैं पूछता ही नहीं यहाँ पे। इतना आसान नहीं है प्रगति देवी, इतना आसान नहीं है। उसके लिए खोपड़ी खुजानी पड़ेगी। मैंने बोला खोपड़ी खुजाओ और सोचो कि उसमें
सर फिर
पहले
आप
रोल
बता
कौन सा
दीजिए
बोला
किस
जाता
किस
है,
काम
रोल
के लिए आता है वो।
है।
आप बता दीजिए सर किस
मैं नहीं
काम के लिए आता है
बताऊंगा,
वो।
मैं नहीं बताऊंगा, खुद सोचो। हर काम मैं नहीं बताऊंगा। अपना दिमाग नहीं लगाओगे, तुम्हें लगता है ना हम तो सब घर में बैठ के सब कुछ कर लेंगे, तो घर में बैठ के नहीं कर सकते हो। उसके लिए एक्सपर्ट चाहिए होता है, और ये चीजें गूगल में नहीं मिलती हैं। तो
Sir, can I try answering that?
listen to me. I have given
Hello.
you a question for homework. Figure it out. That's it. So there might be a question for a direction student. For example, sequence by which in which it is said roll sound, roll camera, blah blah blah. Roll camera, roll sound, this. Third option this, fourth option this. तो उसमें करेक्ट ऑप्शन क्या है? पहले रोल साउंड आएगा, उसके बाद रोल कैमरा आएगा, उसके बाद जो कंटिन्यूटी जो बोलेगा शॉर्ट नंबर टेक नंबर एंड रीटेक सीक्वेंस, सीक्वेंस शॉर्ट एंड टेक नंबर, तीन एलिमेंट होते हैं उसके। तो वो कहीं भी तुम्हें घुमा सकते हैं, वो लोग तुम्हें कहीं भी घुमा सकते हैं। तो ये तो मैंने एक एग्जांपल दिया। अब ये डोमेन स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन है डायरेक्शन का। ये जो क्लास हो रही है वो हर आदमी के लिए हो रही है, चाहे वो एडिटर है, साउंड रिकॉर्डिस्ट है, कैमरामैन है, कुछ भी है। तो हम जो ये क्लास कर रहे हैं कॉमन क्वेश्चन जो 50 मार्क्स का है, जिसमें इस टाइप के क्वेश्चन सबों को पता होने चाहिए। अब ये जो मैंने भी क्लैप वाला चक्कर बताया, ये डायरेक्शन वालों के लिए डोमेन स्पेसिफिक का जो 50 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन है उसमें पूछा जा सकता है। ये एडिटर वाले से नहीं पूछा जाएगा, ये साउंड रिकॉर्डर से नहीं पूछा जाएगा, ये सिनेमेटोग्राफर से नहीं पूछा जाएगा। ये पता होना चाहिए डायरेक्टर जिसको बनना है जिंदगी में। समझे आप मेरी बात? तो उसके लिए क्या है कि आपको जीवन में पैसे खर्च करने पड़ते हैं, आपको समय लगाना पड़ता है, एनर्जी लगानी पड़ती है, किताबें खरीदनी पड़ती हैं। अब मैंने ये किताब, महंगी किताब ली है अपनी जिंदगी में, जो मैं रिदम फिदम दिखा रहा हूं। क्यों? क्योंकि मुझे उस किताब में बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सी इमेजेस दिखाई दी, प्लस द ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट एक्सप्लेनेशन कि ये कहाँ है इसमें रिदम, कहाँ रिदम किधर है। तो उस आदमी ने ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट के अंदर एक्सप्लेनेशन डाला हुआ है। From academics point of view, this is a very interesting book. तो उसके लिए पूरा साल लगता है। एक दिन पहले आ जाओगे या 300 रुपए देके, उसमें उतना ही समझ आता है जितना आ सकता है 3-4 घंटे के अंदर। इसके अंदर एनर्जी, टाइम आपको लगाना पड़ता है, तब जाके ये सब चीजें पकड़ में आती हैं। पूछिए स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन। क्वेश्चन हैज टू बी स्पेसिफिक।
सर सिनेमाटोग्राफी और डायरेक्शन दोनों एक ही है, तो दोनों के अलग अलग आएंगे कि एक ही में आएंगे?
बेटा तुम लोग ना अभी सो रहे हो जिंदगी में, तुम लोग थोड़ा जागो। उन लोगों ने सैंपल पेपर लगा रखा है वहां पर और बोला हुआ है कि 50 मार्क्स का सब लोगों के लिए एक जैसा होगा। गधा, घोड़ा, हाथी, बैल सब लोगों के लिए एक जैसा होगा। और 50 मार्क्स का डोमेन स्पेसिफिक। आप डायरेक्शन हो तो आपका पेपर अलग आएगा, सिनेमेटोग्राफी का अलग आएगा, एडिटिंग का अलग आएगा। उन लोगों ने सैंपल पेपर लगा रखा है, क्योंकि आप सो रहे हैं, आपने वेबसाइट पे जाके नहीं देखा, इसलिए आप ये क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं। अगर आपने वहां वेबसाइट पे थोड़ा कष्ट उठाया होता जीवन में, तो आप ये क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछते। तुम नींद में जाओगे पेपर देने, तो नींद में ही पेपर दे के आओगे। ये क्वेश्चन पूछने का मतलब है तुमने वहां जीवन में कष्ट नहीं लिया। उनकी वेबसाइट पे जाके पीडीएफ फाइलें लगा रखी हैं, छठे दिन, पांचवें, पहले दिन नहीं था वो, फोर्थ या फिफ्थ डे उन्होंने पीडीएफ सैंपल पेपर लगाए हैं, जिससे आपको पता लगे कि पेपर कैसा आएगा। अब वो तुम्हारे घर में आके तो तुम्हें नहीं जगाएंगे कि बेटा जागो, देखो पीडीएफ लगी हुई है। जिसको इंटरेस्ट है उसने देख लिया, जिसने, जो सो रहा है, जैसे तुम पूछ रहे हो, तुम सो रहे हो तो तुमको नहीं पता। उतने लोग एफटीआई जितने नहीं होंगे, बट फिर भी कम से कम 3,000 बच्चा, 4,000 बच्चा बैठेगा ऐसा एफटीआई के अंदर। रेशो वही रहेगा मोरलेस। तो जो तैयारी की है वही घुसेगा। और अब की बार पैटर्न चेंज है तो होगा क्या, वो एक अलग बात है। बट एमसीक्यू के अंदर भी डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन बन सकते हैं। जैसे मैंने अभी आपको बता दिया कि रोल साउंड पहले होगा या रोल कैमरा होगा, अब तुम फंस जाओगे। तुम वहां 100% फंस जाओगे। जिसने आज तक खोपड़ी नहीं लगाई होगी, वहां बैठ के खोपड़ी नहीं लगा सकते। तुम अगर वहां बैठ के सोचने लगोगे कि रोल साउंड होता है या रोल कैमरा होता है, तो नहीं कर सकते हो। मैं बता रहा हूं, तुम्हें लिख के दे सकता हूं मैं तुम्हें, तुम नहीं सोच सकते। दिस थिंग शुड बी नॉन बिफोर, क्योंकि इसमें मेडिटेशन है, इसके अंदर समझ चाहिए कि रोल साउंड बोला जाता है, रोल कैमरा बोला जाता है, और क्यों बोला जाता है उसके पीछे रीजन है। तो जिसको पहले से रीजन मालूम है वो टिक करके आएगा। तुक्का लगा दिया तो वो एक अलग बात है। दो उसमें दो रोल साउंड के होंगे, दो रोल कैमरा के होंगे। अब जिसको पता है वो दो तो डिलीट कर देगा, चलो भाई ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता। बट दो, अगर वो रोल साउंड उसको समझ आ गया कि रोल साउंड पहले बोला जाता है, उसके आगे भी फंसा सकता है वो अल्टरनेटिव के अंदर। तो डिपेंड करता है पेपर कौन बना रहा है। मुझ जैसा आदमी बनाएगा तो तुम पागल हो जाओगे। क्यों? क्योंकि माई थ्योरी इन द लाइफ इज डिफिकल्ट। व्हाट इज डिफिकल्ट? इफ यू कैन क्रैक द डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन, देन यू आर वेलकम। इफ यू कांट, प्लीज इन्वेस्ट योर टाइम एंड एनर्जी इन स्टडी। दैट इज द वे द फिल्टर इज डिजाइन फॉर दीज नेशनल लेवल इंस्टीट्यूशन। ये कोई गली मोहल्ला नहीं है कि घुस जाओगे इधर उधर। 5,000 से ऊपर लोग अप्लाई करते हैं. देयर वाज अ टाइम व्हेन 9,600 पीपल अप्लाइड टू द एफटीआई जॉइंट एंट्रेंस टेस्ट. तो आंसर इज वेरी सिंपल. डोमेन स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन का क्लास नहीं है ये. डोमेन स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन की क्लास में ये क्वेश्चन पूछे जाएंगे. जो 50 मार्क्स का पेपर आने वाला है वहां पर सिनेमाटोग्राफी का अलग होगा, साउंड का अलग होगा, डायरेक्शन का अलग होगा, एडिटिंग का अलग होगा, साउंड का अलग होगा. साउंड में टेढ़े मेढ़े क्वेश्चन पूछे जाएंगे वहां उन्होंने सैंपल में लगाया हुआ है. बट जिसने सैंपल देखा ही नहीं, सो रहा है अपना आराम से बैठ के, तो सोते रहो भैया, क्या फर्क पड़ता है. 50% लोग वहां पे सोते हुए ही पेपर देने जाते हैं. उनको लग रहा होता है हमने बहुत तैयारी करी है. उनको लग रहा होता है, उनके लगने से कुछ नहीं होता है. की है तैयारी तो खट 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 वहां पेपर में आंसर दोगे. तैयारी नहीं करी है, भ्रम है जीवन में, तो बात अलग है. हाँ जी.